Our identities are woven as a web of connections to the people and ideas around us. But once these stabilizing connections are severed, we are forced to wrestle with the question, who are we when we are alone? Cast adrift from the anchors of belonging, unmoored by duty, affection, and responsibility, the familiar threads of self unravel. Exile leaves us wandering in an unsettling sea of the unknown. In this comparative study, we find two contrasting experiences. The Wandering and Encountering Sorrow are two poems that struggle with the physical, emotional, and to the extent that there may be a difference, spiritual experience of exile. To give us some perspective, at the extremities we find a temporal distance of 1,300 years and thousands of kilometers between our two speakers. And on the margins of that gulf, they provide us with two models of exile in how it comes about, is dealt with, and how it ultimately ends. The Wanderer comes from a late 10th century CE manuscript, but it is believed to have been composed before then. It is deeply set in an Anglo-Saxon world. The authorship is undetermined, as well as if the current composition reflects the work of a single mind. It is nonetheless, as it stands, a work that depicts a dying warrior age and the Christian solace that meets it on the other side. Setting the issue of the authorship and the possible later Christian framing aside, The Wanderer begins in the vox propria of an observer, setting the stage for the lament to come, and transitions into the vox lyrica of the Wanderer on line 8. It is his lament that makes the heart of the poem. In his elegy to an age now past, we find he is a warrior whose lord has met an untimely end, and dark clouds of earth covered his gold friend, leaving our wanderer without a purpose and a hall to call home. He is isolated emotionally and bemoans, I must mourn all my afflictions alone. There is no one still living to whom I dare open the doors of my heart. This is compounded as he is disturbed by memories of hall retainers and treasure, and how in his youth his gold friend entertained him. This, however, crosses over to his dreams, when sorrow and sleep together hold the wretched wanderer in their grip, where he lays his hand and head upon his lord's knee in an act of gratitude and submission, only to be stirred and find nothing but the mocking of seabirds. The wanderer is a passive victim of the death of his lord, the passage of time, and the overturning of the world order of his age. He describes a world that dwindles day by day and passes away, a world that the Maker of men laid to waste. For this reason, even as he exercises his agency within his means, his earthly quest remains unfulfilled. He says, I left that place in wretchedness, ploughed the icy waves with winter in my heart, and sadness I sought far and wide for a treasure giver, a man who could welcome me into his mead hall, give me good cheer, entertain me with delights. But the world at the end of the poem has changed irreversibly, and there is no Lord on earth to be found to serve. The observer, however, has told us the greater quest at the very first line, in which the wanderer often pleads for pity and mercy from the Lord. This is the path of the wise man, who must first experience the pains of this world and dip his oars into the icy waters and follow the paths of exile. He must have weathered his share of winters in the world, be patient, neither too passionate nor too hasty of speech, neither too irresolute nor too rash in battle, not too anxious, too content, nor too grasping, and never too eager to boast before he knows himself. These lines seem borrowed from the wisdom literature which ends in an echo of the Delphic maxim, "Know yourself." This not only defines the way out of exile, but the necessity of it. For, as it was said, he must follow the paths of exile before being granted pity and mercy from up high. Sorrow upon sorrow attend the man who must send time and again his weary heart over the frozen waves. The wanderer himself resounds the observer's opening. It is a world of emotional strife and troubles, for nothing is ever easy in the kingdom of earth. The world beneath the heavens is in the hands of fate. Here necessity meets purpose, and in the wasting and remaking of the world, so too must man be made anew. Ultimately, he is transformed into a wise man, as the observer notes after recounting the internal lament of the wanderer. He has, through his trials, grown emotionally and spiritually, emerging quietly from the wintry troubles into wisdom about the true nature of man and his life. There is no triumphant optimism in this poem. At best, one could have hoped for the temporary joys of a mead hall, where treasure flows and friendship finds a footing. The time for this, however, has passed away, darkened under the shadow of night, as if it had never been. Here possessions are fleeting, here friends are fleeting, here man is fleeting, here kinsman is fleeting. The whole world becomes a wilderness. At the end is only the quiet Christian solace of forgiveness and the promise of a better afterlife. It is best for a man to seek mercy and comfort from the Father in heaven, where security stands for us all. Encountering Sorrow, composed in the 3rd century BCE, comes to us from a collection called the Elegies of True, a southern state during the Warring States period that had a distinctive culture, considered to be provincial for hundreds of years after its collapse, and associated with mysticism and shamanism. Both writer and speaker of Encountering Sorrow are presumed to be Chu Yuan, an ostracized statesman cast out from the familiar embrace of court and community. He begins with bold stanzas describing his person, with a splendid pedigree and personal virtues that shone out from birth, eliciting the names Righteous Principle and Spirit Harmony. This boasting comes as a way of telling us of the promise that his life was meant for. These expectations, however, we will soon find dashed by the morally upside-down world of the court. It is this fate that prompts him to press on in life, for as time passes he may lose his chance to fulfill his destiny. Time will not wait. Day and night flit by me without pause, and so, in a call to seize the day, he says, charging forth unfettered upon a sterling steed, Come, I'll lead the way on the journey ahead. At different moments in the poem, the righteous and the corrupt are juxtaposed. One brings success, the other destruction. Chu Yuan expects this universal law to be true for him. He abandons himself in faith to it. He serves the good by giving good counsel, and so helping his Lord stay on the correct path. The stakes are, as we know from the mythological and historical narrative, civilizational in scope. Of this commitment, he says, I think of those sycophants who indulge in passing pleasures on a path that is dark and dismal, danger-filled and declivitous. I do not fear that my own person suffer privation and peril, only that my Lord should meet with disaster. But my Lord does not perceive my inwardmost feelings, but instead believes the slander and flares up with fury. Though I know that loyal counsel can bring calamity, yet I must endure what comes and not desist. I refer to the ninefold heavens as my witness. All this is the fault of my Lord. At the beginning he had made a pledge to me, but later he broke faith, altered course, chose another. The separation itself is not what I suffer most. I only grieve for my Lord's many changes. He stands opposed by the slander of the court and the foolishness of his Lord. He goes on to say, though all the others vie for advance, grasping and greedy, never will I be sated with striving and seeking. Swiftly they gallop and race, scamper and chase, but that is not what my heart hastens for. Old age inexorably encroaches upon me, and I fear my own fair name will not endure. Resolutely I follow the figure of the upright men, not such models as vulgar people of this age conform to. The vulgar people of this age excel in cunning. They violate the rule of compass and square and alter the order. They reject the plumb line to pursue instead the deviant, vying in conformity and collusion as their only measure. Whether Chu Yuan is exiled as in the mytho-biographical narrative tradition, or if he takes a more active role in rejecting the court in order to pursue his destiny, we find that the reason lies in this tension between his devotion to a principled moral way and the corruption of his age. With this, ultimately, he finds himself at an impasse. Since my inner self is truly fair and refined in essence, though my skin sallow from starvation, I will not grieve. Though I pursued refinement and grace, I am reined and curbed. My honest admonitions at dawn, already slandered by dusk. But this is what in my heart I know to be right. Though I face 9 deaths, yet I will never repent. Through this conflict he is made into a romantic martyr. Dispirited, downcast, dejected, foiled and forestalled, alone I endure the desperate troubles of these times. I would rather die at once or perish in exile, but I cannot bear to continue in this state. On behalf of the pure and untainted, I would die for the straight path. Chu Yuan remains in conversation with the past, with his quasi-divine calling to righteousness, to keep fast to the beauty and light of his fate and destiny. Retreating, I will return to perfect my original apparel. Now all at once I turn around and let roam my gaze. peering backwards so as to perceive what lies ahead. I still perceive my beginnings, and so regret nothing. Perhaps it is this confidence in the fate he was given that allows him, in the face of an imposing world, to believe that there is a Lord worthy to be served and to be discovered in the greater world. This deepens the dramatic irony of his predicament, for we know he ultimately does not fulfill his life's promise through the quest for a new Lord. It is with one foot in the past and one in the fading present that he ultimately begins his quest. On my knees with hem outstretched, I set forth my plaint, assured of my own mastery of the righteous path. I yoke jade dragons, and I ride upon a phoenix. Now the tempest rises, and I will soar aloft. What follows is a journey all over the ancient Chinese world, aided by auspicious creatures in search for a consort, here used as a metaphor for his quest to find a new ruler willing to follow a righteous path. Chu Yuan wrestles with doubts and hope, questions the strength of his virtues, while maintaining the impossibility of conforming to a world in the grips of corruption. At last he pauses, rising into the heavens in a blaze of radiance. For an instant I peer back down towards my homeland. The driver is wistful, and my steeds look woeful, idly gyring to and fro. I gaze back and advance no farther. All is done, alas, all done. There is no one in the realm who knows me. Why should I still pine for my old home, since there is none here with whom to rule in harmony? I shall follow Peng and Xian to the place where they abide. It is debated what the last line may mean. One possibility is that Peng and Xian are ascetic shamans, and this means Chu Yuan would retire from service to lords of men, and another that Peng Xian was a nobleman who shared Chu Yuan's ultimate fate of drowning himself. The poem seems to support the former, while the latter approximates itself to the mythobiographical narrative tradition. It was previously said that the promise of his potential was countered by his experience at court with the spirit paragon. However, it is left for us to judge that a man so committed to the right and the good, who finds himself for that very reason in conflict with the world, in exile within himself, by his example does not fulfill a greater calling. The practice of values and moral rectitude, untested, might be less regarded than a commitment from which follows sacrifice and eventually death. Chu Yuan has his interiority firmly rooted from the outset. Beholden to the rule of compass and square, he refuses to let himself waver, even as the tide of his age turns against him. This fuels him to journey for an answer, to accept, or perhaps even choose his exile as an opportunity, as a part of the solution. He embarks with hope, his hardship as proof of his virtue. The wanderer, having lost his Lord, finds his inner self in disarray. The religious and cultural milieu of his time did not prepare him for this. He nevertheless must chart a course through the depths of his own heart, and through this exile and hardship find virtue and come out a wise man. These two exilic narratives separated by vast distances of time and culture, offer contrasting experiences of life's upheavals, one of quiet acceptance and spiritual fortitude, the other of defiant idealism and romantic martyrdom in the face of a worldly injustice. Perhaps these narratives converge, and Xu Yuan, in resorting to asceticism, would find the fulfillment of his virtue as a man of wisdom, his quest for a righteous Lord sublimating into an inward journey towards enlightenment. Perhaps the wanderer, in becoming a wise man, no longer needing the counsel of the Lord, would become a counsel giver, able to supply good counsel, as Xu Yuan did, but to a Lord whose mind and heart are open to receive it. We learn from these journeys the necessities of trials by fire, or as it were, wintry ice, the beauty of unflinching self-confidence, and the strength of humility and remaking oneself in the face of tragedy.